Discover how smarter project insights can lead to better project outcomes.
Hello, project people. A very welcome, warm. Let me start again. Hello, project people. A very warm welcome to our new episode on the Project Chatter podcast. It's great to have you back. Remember to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast player and YouTube if you'd like to see Dale's friendly face, perhaps. Dale, how are you, mate? Welcome back from the camping.
Thank you, Val. Yeah, it was good indeed. I loved your welcome warm. Maybe another sip of coffee before you say the next sentence. But yeah, no, camping was great. Thanks. Just got back. Beautiful down on the Jurassic Coast, down in Dorset, if those of you have been to that part of the UK. Not being able to travel easily abroad, I have been able to explore a bit more of the UK. And I tell you what, I've been pleasantly surprised by a lot of it. So yeah, good to be back. But yeah, I'm hugely excited today with our guest, Val.
Me too. And yeah, that sounds lovely. You got to appreciate the small things, Dale. And for those out there, get out there. If you can travel, do travel. Today, we are joined by Professor Dr. El Capitan Eddie Obeng. How are you today, mate?
I'm great. Fantastic. Never better.
It's good to have you on the show. We've been looking forward to this for a while now. And I wanted to get straight into it. But first, I wanted to we do this sometimes talking about the origin story, Eddie, just understanding how people fall into projects in general, because it's always an interesting story. Can you tell me how you got into projects and where you started in your career?
Yeah, sure. I guess my first real complex project was when I was doing my doctorate, because it was the first time that you had no framework in your life. I was like 21, and they said, go and add something to the store of mankind's knowledge. And I went, what? Okay. And then I had a supervisor. He was great, but it was a bit, I think the word is aloof, So you've got 3 years of your life, and you've got to make something come out the other end. You've got to get to a deliverable, which makes it look like you've done something useful. So that's probably the first project. What I learned was that the university had actually done something quite clever. So after about 3 months, you had to give a presentation to all your peers on what you were going to do and how you were going to approach it. So they basically made you work out the project scope and present it to your peers. And I went to one of the early presentations, and someone else presented their stuff. And basically it was just gibberish. And I thought, I don't want to have the same experience. So they forced me to do the scope, and that's probably where it started. And then I finished that, and I went to work for Shell. And I got this project where they were trying to clean up gases in the North Sea using microbes. And so we were sort of working on that, and they gave me this project. It was amazing because Shell made big projects, like big things. And here I was doing a small research project and having to engage with these people who are moving huge things. And I realized that the two mindsets are completely different. I mean, mine was, let's figure out whether we can grow bugs to eat the poisonous stuff in the gas. And theirs was, we're going to put in a 20-mile pipeline, And it was incongruous. Anyway, so the sponsors and us, we'd go, I went once with my boss, we went to go pitch for more funds. And we turned up with the sponsors, and you could see their eyes. So, when they do cartoons and they do like swivel eyes? Yeah, it was like that. So I realized that there was something weird about sort of doing these. I didn't think about them as projects at the time. That was interesting. And then I left Shell, and I got a job working as a consultant. And that was probably where projects started coming to their own. I was working as an energy consultant. I had a boss, a smart guy called Bodolinov. He figured out that in the old days, if you had a factory, by the way, if I'm talking too long and you need sound bites, do something like that.
Keep going.
Okay.
No, you're doing good.
Out that if you,
you're doing good,
when you had a factory, they would basically bring in all the stuff they were going to do, manufacture from, and then they'd heat it up with steam. So in the old days, you guys are young, you wouldn't know, every factory you went past had steam billowing out the top. And then to cool it all down, once they'd heated it up, they basically take the entire contents of a river and pass them through to cool everything down, okay? And this, of course, is horribly expensive. And he realized that the raw materials came in at room temperature and the finished goods went out at room temperature. So couldn't we just match them up? So that was what I was doing. So we'd go from one company to another saying, we can save you a lot of money. And then we do a project to try and deliver that. And the clients would give us a certain amount of time and money. And so the secret was to deliver the project and the report before the money ran out so there'd be a margin. So that was a really important learning, because normally with a project, you sort of go, how much is it? And they go, 10,000. And then you spend 12,000. You say, well, we're out of budget. Let's cut this quote. But this, you couldn't do that. So that was a really interesting experience, because you learn how to project what not to do anything which wasn't useful. And then I quit that to do an MBA, and I ended up at Ashridge Business School. And I was teaching operations management. So I was teaching about flows and all that stuff because of my engineering background. And then one day my boss, a chap called Peter Needham, I was walking down the corridor, and he came up to me from behind and said, Eddie, and I jumped. And he said, yes. Well, he said, you probably know as much about projects as anyone else. You're going to take over that program. It's running in 2 months' time. So suddenly I had to become a project expert. And it wasn't even as if he'd done the sort of as a leader, you're supposed to inspire your people by saying, Eddie, well, I think that you could grow into this and you have much to offer, all that stuff. He just said, you're just as big an idiot as all the guys who were running the course before. They've obviously left or been fired. Why don't you take it over? So I thought, what on earth do I do? So I looked at the existing course outline, and the course was, do you know the expression, a turnip? I don't know if it's a global expression or not, but a turnip is like, it's just bad. It's something which is of no use. Nobody wants it. It tastes bad. It should be in the ground. It's just not cool. So the course was pretty bad. So the question is, how do you build this thing and revitalize it? And I've been quite lucky, because when I was teaching operations management, there's a chap called Eddie Obeng. If you've come across him, maybe not. He wrote a book called The Goal. It was the first business book which sold 1 million copies. And so I got to know him, and we'd been talking about stuff, and he was teaching at this time a method for doing complex research very fast. It was called effect, cause, effect. And it was quite a mechanical process. And it was for doing things like processes. So it was all about, machine opens, doesn't open, yes, no, that sort of thing. So I thought, can I apply this to a soft system like projects? So I basically spoke to a lot of project managers, and I locked myself in a room, and I built one of these effect, cause, effect diagrams. And I still use it today, which is quite embarrassing. But basically, the 3 things you started off with, costs too much, takes too long, doesn't bloody work. Then in the middle, there was unhappy, demotivated project team. And then the other 3rd thing, which happened all the time, was lost business, unhappy sponsor. Have you come across that?
A little bit.
A couple of times.
You recognize. Okay. So then the question is, well, why? Okay. Project is running late. Why? Because we had to redo the tasks. Why? Because we didn't meet the customer's client's requirements. Why? Because they changed their goals. Why? Because they weren't clear themselves, and we never asked them. Why? Because we haven't bothered to engage with the stakeholders to find what their needs are. Then you go down another track. Oh my goodness, the team are unhappy. Why? Because they had to redo everything. Why? Because we didn't evaluate the project risks. Why didn't you do that? Well, it would have taken us too long to work it all through, so we just rushed into it. And then you go through this, and you discover with this map that almost all the things which happen in projects happen in most or all of the projects. And the things which underpin them, like the anchors, are something about we screwed up the planning, the risk management, the coordination. We didn't get the people engaged, stakeholders and stuff. We just ignored them or forgot them. We didn't learn as we were going. We never reviewed. And our skills of leadership, like my boss who patted me on the shoulder, and team management are rubbish. And so I went, that's my course. So I then just designed the course around those 4 things. But just before I was going to go live, I had a meeting which just shook the world a little bit for me. At the time, there was a project where they were, this is sort of pre-PayPal. So banks couldn't trade properly. So they put a project together called SWIFT, which was to get banks to be able to share money. Can you imagine that on a computer? Who would have known? Anyway, and the chap who was running this project came to visit me because I was at business school. So it's the sort of thing which people come and ask your advice. So they think you're wise. We'll fool them. Anyway, so this chap turned up, and he was talking about this project, and I realized what it was. They kept putting on this project really experienced project managers. the project managers had a good track record, but they were more like the project managers I had at Shell, building the big stuff. They could plan it, set it all out with the timelines and kick everyone's butt as they went along. But this stuff was new technology with a bit of coding, newly emerging, new stakeholders, soft, fluffy. They didn't know how to do it. And so all the skills they used for delivering their projects were inappropriate. And what they would do is they would look at this fluffy thing, they'd find one thing they understood, and they'd concentrate all the resources on that. And so they'd have to fire, I think, 3 or 4 people. And so when he started talking to me, it suddenly occurred to me that I missed one of the things on my effect cause effect diagram. Because it's not just those 4 things, but there's some projects are very closed and others are really open. And it looks like they need different handling, even with, say, stakeholders, because the closed ones, you know the stakeholders before you start. The open ones, you haven't got a clue who they are, but you better find them before they find you because they'll be mad at you. And so that was basically how I got into it. Sorry, long answer, short question.
I love it. I love that backstory. It's amazing. And everyone's story, we haven't asked in a while, actually, Val, the origin story, but everyone's origin story is so fascinating because there's not one way that you get into projects. There's so many different ways. And just that shared experience, I think, you know, the listeners listening go, oh, okay, there isn't a set path, which is amazing. But when you were chatting there, Eddie, it did remind me of, I did have a look on YouTube for some of your previous chats you've had with various audiences, and one of them reminded me of the 5 monkeys fable. So we won't go over that again, but if anyone wants to go check it out, just go on YouTube, Eddie Obeng, and you'll see it. It's quite a classic one. But I think that story is known by a vast amount of people out there anyway, but it's a great one just to remind ourselves how we behave in society sometimes. We don't question enough, and those whys you just asked are great as well. But I'm fascinated by your backdrop, your background with the butterfly and the caterpillar and the magnifying glass. And I know, you know, sort of just half an hour ago from pre-hitting record, you posted on LinkedIn that you'll be talking about why you can't make a butterfly by just sticking wings on a caterpillar. And I was scratching my head going, how the hell is that going to relate to projects? And so that brings me to my first question, Eddie. How does that metaphor, if we can call it that, metamorphosis or non-metamorphosis, relate to project management?
Yeah, it's if I give you a step back, because it'll be useful, okay? So the thing about this lovely backdrop, which you're seeing with the caterpillars turning into a butterfly, is it's one of the ways which I see change. So when people are project managers and they're being paid, they actually forget what the job is about. The world is changing, things change. Not all change is useful. There's improvement change, which makes things better for the people subjectively. And then there's just change, which just messes you around. But there's change, and there's whole sorts of different types of change. Now, one sort of change is change which is like the small caterpillar eating some leaves and getting to be a big caterpillar. Okay? A lot of projects are about that. They're about taking a caterpillar egg and turning it into a caterpillar, but it's basically caterpillar stuff. And so the skills you bring to bear aren't changing the organization, aren't changing the world. You're just doing really sort of more or less things which people understand the problem to or the solution to. So that's change. And it's very important that we specify that most project change is within that paradigm. See, unfortunately for us, because I did a doctorate, I used to write scientific papers where you'd have to define all your terms before you could start writing the paper. So change for me would be very separate from projects, because a project is a chunk of change. It's a piece of change which you can sort of get your mind around the problem or the solution. Then there's something else which is called transformation. Transformation is not the same as projects. So you would never go to a caterpillar for lessons on how to fly as a butterfly. In fact, if you can define as a caterpillar what a butterfly does and looks and thinks about, it's not transformation. Transformational change is beyond your ability to understand the outcome. They're very different things. So most projects are not transformation projects. Most projects are just projects. Fatter caterpillar. In this fast-changing, complex world, post-COVID, pre-COVID, with pandemic, anti-lockdown, etc., we've all spotted we need to transform. But the thing which happens is people go, I'll give you an example. So they go, right, before all this lockdown crisis-y thing, we used to go to offices. Then we stayed at home, okay? Now we can go back to offices. I don't want to go back to the office. No, we've got to go back to the offices. I don't want to go back to the offices. Okay, hybrid. We're going to combine 2 days at home with 3 days in the office. That's just the caterpillar. This is not the transformation. Are you with me?
Yeah.
And so transformational change is what they're after, but because they're assuming they can define it, they fail every single time. Because if you can define it, it's not going to transform anything because you already know the answer.
Yeah.
Does that help? So I mean, I'll put it in context for you. So yeah, as we go along, yeah.
No, absolutely. That's amazing. And I was thinking as you're talking there, how many projects think that, it's butterfly,
No, it's very few. Because, okay, most project managers are sort of nice, decent, normal people. Okay, so I worked a lot in design, so I know how designers are. And designers, I mean, when I was working at the IGO, when I was teaching, we'd all sit on the floor. Okay, so designers flop outside the norm.
Yeah.
You with me? They're happy to wear a shirt which doesn't match and draw upside down just to get the right colors.
Yeah.
Project leaders don't do that. They hate going outside the comfort zone. So the probability that you'll get a normal project manager who can lead transformation is like small. There are some, but not many. There are very few people who can lead transformation.
No, absolutely. And this brings us, I guess, back nicely around to the topic or the title of this episode. And I was intrigued as well, how to deliver perfect all-engaging projects. And I wondered, can we deliver perfect all-engaging projects? But then the second part really grabbed me, and why we actively and intentionally mess them up. I don't know where to start. Let's start with the back end of that topic first, Eddie. Do we intentionally, how do we, and why do you say we intentionally mess up projects?
So I'll just give you two stories, which will sort of hopefully illustrate the fact that we actively go around sabotaging our own projects. So when I was at Ashridge teaching ops management, one of the things which I ended up teaching was things like flow, process flow.
Yep.
And there was a game we used to play with the manufacturing people so they would get better at managing their complex systems. It's called a dice game. Basically, you got them to sit in a row, you gave each one of them a dice, and they had to pass a number of counters each throw, okay? But of course, the dice are variable, so they get sort of stuck in one area, less inventory, not have enough to move across, and so on. And so they could see the challenges of interdependence and variability. And then you'd say to the group, so what should we do about it? And eventually they'd work out that what they wanted to do was have dice which only flew through 3s and 4s, okay? And actually, better than that, when something came out the far end of the factory, that was the only time they put new raw materials in. So they would work that out. The first game they played would be noisy, etc., etc. And then they would work out and get quieter and quieter. And then I'd say to them, okay, there's another game we can play where basically we'll choose you as a lead, one of you as a leader, and they allocate the dice to try and balance it all out. And they love that. They would just make so much, give me the dice, I need the dice. But at the end of each round of the game, nothing came out of their factories. Because it's too complicated for a human being to be able to guess what the dice is going to do next and respond and so on. Now, why am I telling you that? Because then I'd say to them, which game did you prefer? Guess which one? The quiet one where they delivered good stuff, or the noisy, fun one where they didn't know what was going to happen?
The noisy, fun one.
The noisy, fun one. Okay, bear that in mind. Second story. I had a client, JP Morgan, and there's a chap there called Simon Cooper. And I worked with him for years to train up all his people. And one day he phoned me up and he said, everything you're teaching us is great. We've rolled it all out. project's going much better. We've got like 70% working, etc. But I would like all the projects to be perfect. Do you know what I did? I laughed. I mean, come on. Everybody knows that you have to be stupid to want all your projects to be perfect. So I laughed. And he said, no, I mean it. So I laughed again. And he said, no, I really mean it. So I thought, let me think about it. And then we started talking. And this whole thing of the prodigal project manager, that whole thing, let's take 2 project managers, okay, or 3, okay? So we've got me, okay, I'll be the mercenary one. I'll make Val the very good project manager, and I'll make Dale the very bad project manager, okay? Sorry, Dale, okay?
No worries.
So Val's a great project manager, runs a project to do something, sort out all the problems in advance, okay? Nothing goes wrong. Senior people look at that. No, actually, the senior people don't even notice it. So guess what? Val is being paid half the amount Dale is being paid, because Dale's project we know is difficult. Why? Because he's messing it up, and we have to, as senior managers, turn up all the time. But Dale is getting it wrong because he's not good at it. You know what I mean? I'm the mercenary one. I know that if a project goes too smoothly, no brownie points. I know if it's a disaster, brownie points, but they will want to fire you eventually. So I do something very clever. I let the project go just slightly wrong. And then I go to the boss and I go, oh, looks like the supplier is going to be canceling on us. And they go, what are you going to do about it? And I go, let me go and have a look. I'm going to reschedule my retrospective, blah, blah, blah. And then I rush around and I come and present, look, we fixed that problem. You use me? So any smart and slightly cynical project leader knows not to make it look too easy.
Yeah.
If possible, to sabotage it ever so slightly. Not only is it more fun, as we learned from the first example, but it actually gets you further. And I'll tell you, I did like a Twitter streamy thing, and with all these project leaders, I did a couple of months ago. And so my question was, I said to them, can you predict what's going to go wrong in your projects? And they're like 400 responses. Yes, of course, we know exactly what's going to go. I can always tell you about it. All these people, they all knew what's going to go into the project. Then my second one was, well, why are you letting it happen? And then I got like this trickle of sort of 2 or 3 tweets. Yes, no, we actively do it. And then the other part we do also, which is, am I allowed to say batshit crazy on here? I don't know.
Yes, you can say whatever you want.
Of course.
Okay, so we're managing change. We're trying to get to an outcome. Traditionally, most of the change we tried to manage was closed change, like the Shell example I gave you, like the Swift project leaders. We know what we're going to do and we know how we're going to do it. So it's quite closed. As the world sped up, got faster, organizations had less time to run pilots, we started moving towards projects where we knew the goal, but not the method, or projects where we worked out the method, but we weren't sure of the outcome. And finally, we moved to projects where we didn't know the goal or the method. So we've got this spread of different projects now going on. Okay. So what happens is that the project leader has to understand what they're dealing with, and then has to be able to respond. But the organization and the sponsors also need to know what to do. If you know the goal and the method, how often would you review? You know the goal, you know the method.
Yeah, it's like a factory conveyor belt, so it's all good, right?
You're doing the research I was doing at Shell, where we don't know what, we don't know how often should you meet with the sponsor and review? Daily? Hourly? You and me? They're not the same.
Yeah.
Completely different. So what happened was, I'm using the word review because the closed projects, which is where we've come from, the way you kept them sort of on track was you'd make a plan. The plan's quite stable because you know what and how. And then you'd go along and you'd look behind you in the rearview mirror and you go, is it working? Oh, yeah, we need to fix that. And then you'd fix that. So the whole thing of most project management is driving the project with a plan, but steering the car in the rear view mirror. That's the philosophy we have because of where it came from traditionally. That's why people do reviews, retrospective, etc. You know, everything's looking back. How did you do? What are the metrics? Red, amber, green. It's all historic stuff, which is great. But the world we live in, the pace of change, as you probably saw from my TED talk, is faster than our ability to learn. So looking backwards isn't so useful. When tomorrow looks like yesterday, really useful. When tomorrow doesn't look like yesterday, less useful. You want to look through the windscreen of the car. So on top of the behavioral and incentives, basically, to make your project go off the road, the mechanisms built into the organization for managing projects, programs, portfolios is totally out of date. It's just past its sell-by date.
Yeah. Wow, amazing. And that analogy of the windscreen and the rearview mirror, Martin might remember this. When I first joined his team, I was only a month or two in, and I was asked to do part of the team away day. And I spoke about forecasting, and I used that analogy. I said, why do we look at what's 10% when actually 90% is what we should be looking at?
Correct.
You know, so yes, we should be using that 10% to aid our forecasts, but not basing it entirely on that rearview mirror. Anyway, I won't go back into that, but that really resonates with me.
At least he didn't fire you because you're still here. So
yeah, I think Martin would have fired me if he had the chance on every single day we work together.
Once or twice, maybe.
But no, it's fantastic that you bring that up, because it brings back memories. But the other one was, you mentioned around, you know, how we as PMs, the various types of PMs, and getting it slightly wrong intentionally, the clever ones are good at it. And Val and I can't remember, was maybe with Paul Gurge and Al Simonite, where we spoke about the personality traits of most PMs. And perhaps there's some narcissistic sort of personality trait that most PMs have, because they do like a little bit of pain. I don't know. But yeah, I could probably listen to you all podcast, Eddie, or Cyber Frank, or whichever name we'll go by. But we'll get into Cyber Frank in a little bit. But Val, I want you to get in there, because you've been writing down copious amounts of notes. Oh my goodness.
You just gave us a whole bunch, Eddie, in terms of cause and effect, root cause, process flow. We talked about structured approaches to unstructured outcomes. I mean, there's a lot in there, food for thought. You probably have to listen to this twice to pick it all up, and you sell it with so much enthusiasm. And I just want to touch on that point as well. We did do another exercise, Dale, I don't know if you remember it as well, Martin, where we had the chain line. We were building a paper airplane, and we had the work instruction, and it was around working as a team and looking at the dependencies, as you said, Eddie. And we watched them the first time, Eddie, and they just fell apart, literally fell apart, started playing with each other. You know, there's people in the corner starting to cheat, you know, and it's exactly that idea that they do like it when there's a bit of fun, a bit of chaos. I think there's something to that for project management personalities as well. And, you know, I wonder with project managers, who do have a level of self-sabotage, or at least a little of sabotage on the project, do you think that's a conscious output or an unconscious output?
I think it's unconscious for almost everyone, but I also think there are a bunch of psychopaths who actually actively do it, but then they end up senior very fast, so they're not project leaders very long because they're so successful. Because they do it and they go, wow, that project leader, wow, look what they did. They get promoted, senior project leader, PMO head, blah, 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 director of projects globally, they're gone. You know, so we don't experience them in the projects as much. We might experience them briefly as they zoom past us, quadrupling their salaries. But no, yeah.
There's a great book. I can't remember who wrote it. It's called Office Politics, and they talk about the various types of personalities you'll definitely encounter on a project, and one of them is psychopath. Just switching gears to and still using your analogy around the caterpillar and the butterfly. We were talking about you know, trying to find a way to transform, right? But traditionally we can't necessarily know the outcome. All you get is really kind of, if you do, you just get bigger caterpillars.
Yeah, caterpillars always.
Is project methodology part of that issue? I mean, if you think about the structured approach to unstructured outcomes, we have defined for project managers a list, right? You say, well, depending on the project type, this is the methodology that you will use. And then, as you've mentioned before, some people don't want to use waterfall or PMBOK or critical path method, or whatever it is. They want to use agile. And then someone said, well, we'll just do hybrid because they wanted everyone to be harmonious, right? And so you get hybrid projects. And I've been on projects where they've claimed that they're hybrid, but I have no idea what that means. I have no idea what that means. Do you have a view on that?
Yeah. So basically, when I understood that there were basically 5 things which drove traditional project success, the things I listed, and the type of change, and once you put them together, I then expanded on the on this whole idea of open and closed. And this is quite important. What I discovered was I gave them 4 names. So I had what I call paint by numbers projects. You know, like when we're kids, you color it in. Paint by numbers project, you know the what, you know the how, you color it in, ka-ching. And while the project is running, it often will stay paint by numbers, not always. Because paint by numbers happens when you really understand what you're doing and how you're doing it, and it hasn't changed. That's real caterpillar land. Then I gave the others names. There was one called a quest. Going on a quest is like the quest for the Holy Grail, King Arthur. What do we want? We want the Holy Grail. How are we going to find it? I don't know. And so it was a bit different. And then if you've ever just messed around with a new phone or a new camera, you always film something, you upload it. YouTube, nobody watches it. Why? Because it's rubbish. There was no script. It's like the solution looking for the problem. I call that movie project. And then there's one I call being lost in the fog, which I basically named because at the time I was thinking about the problem, I actually got lost in the fog. That's another story. So those 4 types of projects are quite crucial to understand, and they're all in All Change. If you've read All Change in the book, it's all in there. Now, why is that important? Because on top of that, there are 2 other dimensions which make projects easier or harder to manage. One is, if you've worked, did you guys work in software? No? Have you done? Okay, so if you're doing like a physical project at home, okay, you get home, well, apart from Val, who's locked at home all the time. The rest of us, we get home, I don't know, somebody's working on the kitchen. What do? You go and take a look. Why? Because you can see it. Why? Because it's visible. Progress is obvious and visible. You're working on a software project. You say to the programmer, how's it going? They go, it's coming along really well. I say, what's up? You say, a couple of bugs for me to iron out. Then you come back the next day, how's it going? They go, yeah, it's going really well. Where are we up to? A couple of bugs for me to, you have no clue because there's no visibility. Progress is not obvious and measurable. So just keep that as another measure. And then the third one is about who's driving the change and who's delivering it. And you were talking, Val, earlier about office politics. So if you have a project where the people who are asking for it to be done, the drivers, are in the same organization as the ones who are delivering it, guess what? Politics. No money changes hands, horrible politics. If you have a project where the people who are driving it are in a different organizations, the ones delivering it, nice commercial project, now they're going to fight over the legal terms.
Yeah.
You with me? If you have a project where, I don't know, etc., it's a 4x4, you can work it out. Okay, so effectively, I took that and I had a look at it and I realized something, which is, yeah, we need planning, risk management, coordination, we need stakeholder management, learning and review skills, personal leadership skills. But if we then put on the end of it this 4-quest movie paint by numbers and then describe them as the amount of visibility, how easy it is to manage and progress, describe in terms of the level of politics or the money, you literally could see each project, what was likely to go wrong in it. And that's what people are verbalizing when they say, yes, we know what's going to happen. But again, you see, I'm very precise in my terms. So I have foggy projects, paint by numbers projects. I know what they are. So I'm not sure what a hybrid project would be because it's just a made up name. What happens in our business is people sometimes want to get rich. So if they just turn up and they're doing the same old stuff everyone else is doing, are you a project manager? I'm a project manager. What do you do? I can do a scoping document. They go, oh, we won't pay you for that. Everyone knows how to do that. But if you go and go, are you a project manager? Yeah, I'm a project manager. What do you do? Well, I do a integrated scope visionary alignment issue thing. You go, ooh, we want some of that. How much? $10, So there's so much noise and nonsense when, if you define your terms, it's really straightforward. You think, can I define the goal, the method? Yes, no, yes, no. Is there going to be some challenges I go forward with visibility? It can go off the track without me noticing. Is there going to be lots of politics? So I get nonsensical decisions or not? Or is it financial? It's so easy to do. If I got stakeholders, if you define your terms, ka-ching. If you just go with the latest buzz, AI, we actually change agile, integrated, waterfall. It's just nonsense. But it's okay. It's fun. It's fun.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. And it goes back to your point as well. I think when people say complex, what they mean is sometimes it's self-inflicted. And we had this saying, Eddie, and I'm sure you'll love it. We said, be careful we don't outsmart ourselves. We used to come up with all sorts of great ideas, didn't we, Dale?
Yeah.
And we're like, we're going to roll this out. But just before we did kind of the grandma test. Would anyone actually understand if we did roll this out? And Martin would say, nah, probably not. And was like, oh well, let's not do it, because arguably complexity, I guess, without the fun is just hard work, right? Yeah. And so we were challenged, and I just wanted to get your views on what a hybrid would be. But I'm glad you've thoroughly.
It's not a thing. It's not a thing.
Yeah, we dismissed it. So there you go. I'm going to go back to these projects now and just give them a kick up the ass.
Just use the 4 things I described. So paint by numbers, how does that work? It's definition.
Yeah.
You draw it out, you number it, you color it. So that's like a waterfall. You can actually literally see it. A quest. How did King Arthur do his quest? Basically, he realized he had no idea how to find the Grail. So he got all his knights and he assigned each one of them. It's like parallel prototyping. He assigned each of them a role. And he said, go ye and seek. And they went, we'll seek thee, liege, etc. Okay. And they left on their horse and rode off to the different corners of the country. And that's how he did it. He explored everywhere. But the reason that it became a legend, which we now talk about, is because the project basically failed. He didn't understand how to manage that type of change. When he was sending them off, he should have said, seek ye, but be back at Christmas. Okay. He should have set the time or money limit for the amount of exploration. He didn't. One of them looked, I think, for 100 years, which is what's known as serious project overrun. And that's how it became a legend. So what he should have done is he should have brought them back and then sat around the table and said, what did you find? I saw a plastic cup. I saw a metal one. And then discuss, review, realign the resources, and then go down the most likely tracks in order to narrow down. And that's like rad, okay? Or if it was more of a movie, then just like a movie, they focus on the script, on the what, on the finding out what the stakeholders want. And then when you produce each bit, you check it with the stakeholders, then you roll out next week, you check it, just like you would do if you're making a film. Do the rushes and check them. And if it's fog, which is what we have a lot of because the world has accelerated, you don't know what, you don't know how do you work through the fog? One step at a time. Is it important to have discipline? Absolutely. More discipline than anything else. Should you have good communication and hold hands? Absolutely. So Agile, for example, sort of fits into that, but has like one foot in the quest camp. And that's why sometimes people struggle with Agile, because they try and have the purpose, and then at the same time, they're trying to deal with the fog. And then they get all sorts of different philosophies and get confused. But basically, it's the scenario. You go from the type of change to the best method. You don't start with the method. You start with the problem. And you're always aware that at any time, these can move around. You start running. We're doing this podcast, okay? Looks a bit so paint by numbers-ish. You've done it before. I've done that sort of thing before. We can go, you can ask me questions, etc. Then all of a sudden, I don't know, let's say Skype cuts out for 2 of you. Now we might we'll carry on with the method. We've moved from paint by numbers to movie. Then all of a sudden, my screen starts looking funny things, and then a funny voice like an alien comes across. You're now in the fog. Sweat pouring from Dale's forehead. So they can move. And as it moves towards the alien voice, Dale now has to go to one step at a time. He can't continue. And what happens is people have this, I believe in this method. And they'll go Agile. And then the thing will become more paint by numbers, more clear. But they're still doing their 2-week sprints, but they know exactly what they have to deliver. So it's become a bit weird and religious. I don't understand it myself, but it's peculiar.
Yeah. Well, we've been talking about this a while, and Dale and I have we postulate, because we do talk to inspiring and very smart people like yourself, and we think that there a pinch point around education, because I think some of the project managers are indoctrinated to think a certain way. And I know you're big on creativity and innovation and the future facing stuff. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit, and then I'll pass off to Dale, because I know he's got some questions. But the hard thing, I think, is when you say to a project manager, let's say, the only way you can deliver a project is in this framework. And you've got a bit of a checklist, so you can adopt and you can be a little bit flexible. But what you end up doing is you end up closing out any creativity altogether. And I think out of necessity, then that's why they might rock the ship and make it a little bit harder or a little bit more complex or a little bit more, divergent, because that gives them the ability to make the job interesting.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if the project was just, PMBOK, waterfall, you start here, you finish here, what a boring job that would be.
Yeah.
That would be so boring. So the only way you can make that more fun is kind of rocking the boat. You're sitting in a boat, and you're on the water. Rocking it's a little bit fun, right?
Yep.
Not rocking it too far, obviously, because you'll fall out. But what's your point around education? Do you think that there's a way to install creativity back into project managers?
Yeah, I think you're so right. So there's a step back from that, because once an organization or a methodology or this is how you're going to do it takes hold, you've already moved away from managing change through projects. I'll give you an example. Let's go back to the work you're having done at home, which you go and have a look at in your kitchen. Okay. How will you know if it succeeded? Well, obviously, if they do it to time, cost, and quality, and you pay them out, you said, and it sort of works, that's one measure. Those are the hard measures. But maybe you'll never employ that person again. Why? Because they were a bit smelly, or they made you feel like a bit creeped out, or they made a lot of noise as you were going along, and your other half wasn't comfortable with them in the house. You and me. So when you look at the success, there's the hard stuff, then there's the soft stuff, which is people, relationships, politics, and all the rest of it. And unless you can deliver on both of them, the project can't actually succeed. And a lot of the methodology things are about putting the sink above the pipe, as opposed to everything else. They'll say, have you put the sink above the pipe and got sign off from the house owner? And the house owner is going, I don't like the sink above the pipe because you've got it facing the wrong way with the taps on this side, and they're going, why did you get it wrong? Well, I had to tell you 5 times. So once you get into that, we're going to give you a formulaic method, you're already failing. And then if you push that into an educational program, which is good business, because think about it, if you're going to create a project leader who can manage change, who can manage people, who understands emotions, can understand persuasion, influence, can communicate, I mean, that's a really expensive program. I mean, when you go to sell it, your clients won't buy it because you'll say, well, $5,000 per person. But if you can say, we're going to put them through this program, it's 3 hours and they learn this methodology, and then there's the handbook they follow. The client goes, hey, how much? It's got 50p. Go, yeah, bargain. We'll put 20,000 people through it. So then you end up indoctrinating your 20,000 people to think that going through these actions and motions actually are the process of leading change. It's just a hoax, basically.
Yeah.
Your just to comment there quickly, your monkey fable on that point, people definitely need to go and look at that point at your monkey fable. Well, sorry, I had to jump in and say that.
No, please do. I'm going to actually give over to Martin. Martin, if you've got some questions, please fire away.
Sure. I'll take a slight tangent. I really enjoyed one of your TED talks about leadership, and it links to project management quite well. You're very passionate about saying leadership can be learnt.
Yes.
But from our experience, most of the training manuals haven't really changed in recent years, given the rate of change that's going on in the world. How do you still get to that opinion?
Okay. So here's many different things, different ideas. So when I left the sort of business school, so I built all this stuff, I left to set up Pentacle. I wrote All Change. It made people go, oh, projects. Okay, that was great. Made me lots of money, bestseller, and so on and so forth. Very useful, got the ball rolling. And it's quite funny because most people obviously haven't read it because it's quite an old book and I never wrote edition set to it. Actually, I'm doing the second edition now, so that'll be interesting. So see how that how that plays when it comes out. But having done all that, I then came out and said, well, okay, fast changing world. I'm not constrained by a business school. How would you go about teaching this new world? It's changing faster than you can learn. So I went, right, let me just take the full curriculum of what they teach in a business school and see what is we teach and whether it's still relevant. So if you take something like planning, okay, we had elaborate planning things which had to do with Gantt charty, all this stuff. That's great if you're paying by numbers and you have plenty of time to teach people. But if you're saying the world's changing fast, then this rule I put on myself is everything I teach must be teachable and applicable within a 15-minute cycle. Okay? Because otherwise no one's paying any attention. So imagine planning old world. Okay, guys, we're going to make a plan for a project. Okay, great. Do we have a previous one? No. Okay, let's start with what are the key activities? What's the flows of the activities? You can hours. Okay. Now, if you're going to change and if you're going to deliver foggy projects, how the hell do you plan when you don't know what and you don't know how? Any ideas? No. Okay. So it's an easy trick. You use a very simple phrase. You basically say, okay, let's pretend we finished this. Let's pretend it's happened. How are you feeling? You shout. How are you feeling? Come on, we've done it. It's successful. How are you feeling?
Amazing. Yeah.
Right.
Fantastic.
Okay. So let's now discuss some of the things we must have done to get you to that feeling. So in order to have successfully delivered the podcast across 47 time zones, we must have, and then I go, what must we do, Dale? Dale says, we must have made sure that we've got good people to come and talk. We write it down. What must I do, Martin? We must have made sure we've got good things. A different voice, okay? What must I do, Val? Val walked out, so Val have a deep voice. We must make sure that we've got people lined up and we got technology works, okay? So you capture all the things we must have done. Once you schedule them, you have a plan. It's called sticky steps. And you can do this collaboratively, thereby bringing in all the experience and all the brains, teach it like I've just done, collect the data within a 15-minute cycle, and have a plan. And it works. It'll tell you what the duration is and everything else. So I knew I had to create that. And that sticky steps thing is what we call a performance enhancement tool, people effectiveness tool, people engagement tool, possibility exploration tool. I call them PETs. So my focus was on, rather than a methodology with all these bits, let's look at the things people have to do. Plan, make a decision, lead. I'm coming to the lead. Learn, review, look through, preview. Prelimination is what I call it, where you look through the front window, okay, and so on. And let's make these little pets which allow people to collaboratively fix that problem. And as they're going along, when they hit a problem, they pick the right pet and apply it. So instead of going, this is the tool, you must make sure you've got a scoping document, etc. No, what do we need? No one knows what we're doing. Okay, what's the pet for that? 5 Ps, bring it across. Let's work on that. Okay, great. Now we understand what we're doing, the purpose, principles, what's in, what's out, what performance looks like, who the key people are, done. Leadership. So I trained as an engineer. So I hate sort of role play type things. I'm also an introvert. Nobody ever believes when I tell you.
You can afford us.
So I know that even soft things you can put flowcharts to if you write the right flowchart. So if you take leadership, let's say let's go back to that bank example. I have one of those very experienced paint by numbers project leads, and I want them to lead through the fog. Okay. How do I advise them to do it? Well, when you're leading, you're just leading. But what's interesting is, what is it the followers are after? Why would you follow anyone? Come on, you guys, you follow people through your lives. Give me some reasons why you follow people.
You're inspired.
Inspired. Vision.
Motivation.
Express yourself.
Yeah. Learn. Be with your mates. There's like 5
have
things.
Fun.
Yeah, have fun, etc. So there's about 5 things, learn, vision, direction, inclusion, motivation. Those are roughly the things that you as a follower are looking for, whether you're senior to the project leader or not, because leadership is not about seniority, it's about following. Now, there's another definition which they've screwed up, because leadership used to be about following. Now it become about position in the hierarchy. And they even say this magic word, senior leader. Creases me up. What the hell is that? What's a senior leader? Do they know lead in a senior way? I mean, what on earth? Okay, so your followers are looking for those things. But if you think about it, like that's the radio receiver, they're waiting for motivation, inclusion, and excitement. Okay, you're the transmitter, but you can't do inclusion to somebody. The way somebody knows to follow you is because they watch your behavior and go, yeah, I like the way they behave, or they feel the emotions that you have, or they see the actions and they start to copy what you act, or they like your logic and your thinking, your process. So behavior, emotion, action, and thinking. So if I want to teach somebody about how to lead in the fog, chances are I'll try and create a situation where they have to start to bring out the behaviors which work in the fog and the ones, as opposed to the ones which work in paint by numbers. So imagine I was following you, Martin, and we're in the fog. What sort of behavior would you have to demonstrate to persuade me to keep following you?
Stable actors, if you know what you're doing.
Wonderful. Any particular emotions you'd have to sort of beep out there?
Calm.
Okay. And what would you, in terms of thinking and sharing your knowledge and so on and so forth, what else would be crucial for me to follow you in the fog?
Inspiration. You
not too much.
You want to be led.
You'd want to say what you did. You want to be clear, and that would build trust, because you never follow anyone through a fog you don't trust. Let's flip to the other end. You know the goal, you know the methods, paint by numbers. You're the leader. What do you need in terms of behavior for me to follow you?
Do as I say.
And there we have it. It's not the same list, is it? So now we can then isolate the behaviors, emotions, actions, and thinking, and we help people to learn. So that's basically how I do it.
That's
First,
interesting.
understand what the challenge you're trying to deal with is. Then build a model of how it works, like the radio model. Then look at the elements, and then figure out how you teach people the elements so they can do the elements.
So in the answer there, you mentioned soft skills a lot of times. So as a follow-on to, can leadership be learned? Can emotional intelligence be learned? It's one of the kind of buzzwords on projects at the minute. How do you see that in the sphere of leadership and obviously related to projects?
First of all, I spent a lot of time reading about emotional intelligence, and I didn't understand it, to be honest. I wasn't sure exactly what they meant, because I know people who at work, they would say, you have no emotional intelligence. And then you see them with their kids, or you see them coaching a, I don't know, hockey team, and you go, so I've never understood what it's on about, so I'm probably not the best person to ask that particular question. But I suspect it's just one of these fads, like I was joking about it earlier. What they're saying is we want people to do soft skills. Okay, great. What should we call it now so they'll give us money? My guess. The reality is you want the project leader to think not just about the hard outcomes, but the soft outcomes and the process of the people going through to that soft outcome. And that's really what you're after. And if you do it through emotional intelligence, or just telling them, as a leader in the fog, make sure you build trust. What that means is when you promise to do something, do it. But most important, remind people you did it. You promised you were going to do it, and you did it. It's called blind trust. It's one of my methods. Promise, do it. Remind them you promised that you did it, and do this at least 3 times every single week. And suddenly everyone go, oh, Martin, he always does what he says. He's a top guy, that Martin. Okay, and so you get the effect. I don't know whether I've taught them emotional intelligence, but what I know is that everyone's following them through the fog now.
Yeah, that's what you want, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of teaching, I'm really not much of a what person in terms of teaching. I'm more of a how person. You were saying earlier, Val, about sort of indoctrinating project leads. And I think a lot of the teachers like the what. What is emotional intelligence? Agile is this. So they like to tell you what things are as opposed to how you make them happen. And I've just got that engineering background where I go, well, I can give a name to the what, but I don't even need to mention that, because when it works, they don't care. Yeah,
that's such a good point. And I'll just jump in there, because I think I explained that to a few clients. We have another guy who works in strategy. He's a great guy, but he's all about the why and the what. He'll inspire you. He'll give you direction. This is why we're doing this, which is inspiring to listen to. But when the project kicks off, I always call myself the how guy, because so we're a good partnership. He's the why, I'm the how. That's how I kind of deliver that.
Exactly.
And I think that's important because I'm not constrained by my choices aren't constrained by methodology. And so I don't go in and say, well, we're going to deliver this in an agile way, and this is going to be the best thing for you. We try and work out exactly like you said, what do we explain when we first said that? What was the intent? What's the outcome of the client? There's a little bit of, and I love the way you've got the paint by numbers, the quest, the movie, the fog. I think you dropped in some Monty Python there, which I love. We need to have fun as well. And I think what they're trying to get to with emotional intelligence, just to go back on that track, is I think it's more about negative emotional restraint than it is about EQ, right? It's about not blowing your top and hammering people, treating them like dogs if you don't treat your dogs nicely. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily positive reinforcement. I think it's just to relieve stress, because if you're angry in a meeting room, it can increase pressure, and a lot of people don't like pressure. And I actually think there's room for pressure in an environment like a project. Maybe you can comment a little bit on that in terms of positive and negative reinforcement.
Sure.
And where you've seen that work in projects.
So my journey through projects, I gave you the origin story, and then I wrote All Change. And All Change is basically, this is what happens in projects. So it was the project types I talked about and the different methods. And then I was teaching that for a while. And then I wrote another book, which I planned to write much. I put the title to a book which I had planned to write much later, which was called Perfect Projects. And then I wrote a book called Putting Strategy to Work. And the reason I wrote, it's a long journey, but I'll get there. The reason I wrote the book, Putting Strategy to Work, was because I had a client who was a retailer, and they kept rolling out these portfolios of projects, and they never landed properly. And I went and actually looked around. One of the problems was they only had, I think it was 15 minutes training for the staff on the counters. So the bosses were dreaming up all these wonderful schemes, but they could never turn into day-to-day process. They just got bottlenecked. And so I changed it so that the bottleneck drove the project portfolio. And by thinking about the people, all of a sudden the work was arriving so they could be trained. In doing that, I sort of got this whole idea that when you think about projects in Caterpillar land in an organization, it's more around integrated change management. There are current processes people are using. The project might move those a little bit. It has to connect with those processes. There is an emotional culture in the organization. People might need to change their belief systems or whatever else. There are strategies where the organization is going, the big why piece, which needs to be converted into a program or portfolio, which then has to be turned into a project so that we can do the how bit, which then ends up in the process. The project has to be a complete project from inception to outcome so we can get the value and the money and the benefits. So once I understood that, I started thinking, okay, well, that's projects, it's doable, okay? And then I started looking at this windscreen versus rear view mirror thing for Simon. And one of the things which we learned from that was that, or I came up with was, do you remember the guy who landed the plane in the Hudson? Yep. Remember Solly? He took off in the 747, hit some birds, and then he had to land it in the Hudson, okay?
Yeah.
So if you've ever listened to it, they're busy telling him, you can go to LaGuardia, you can go here, and he's just looking and going, sure, I'll never make it that far. I'm going in the river. Because he knew the glide path of the plane. Okay. Now, from what I've explained, if you know what type of project is this PodQuest movie paint by numbers, if you know it's visible, invisible, whether you know the drivers, the deliverables, the politics, the money, etc., if you know those things, you can guess the glide path. You know what's going to go wrong. It's foggy, it's invisible. Well, in 2 weeks' time, we'll have a big row in the meeting because somebody will say, why haven't you defined the scope? And I was like, I don't know, it's guys are going to come to our meetings. You can see it coming. You with me? So hang on, how should we reward project leaders? Should we wait till they screwed up and have the row and have the stress in the meeting? How about if we all sat around in a circle and we went, this project you're doing with the sponsor and everyone else, some of the team members or whatever it is, well, what is it? It's a foggy one. Okay, let's take a big sheet. Let's write down all the things we think are going to go wrong, from definition to refining to implementing to closeout. Let's put them all up there. Great. project leader, we're really sorry. If any of these things here go wrong, you get a big kicking because that's your glide path. You're not going to get any brownie points for fixing anything on the glide path. If something comes up which you didn't see and you don't fix it, we're going to say you should have known, okay? And if it comes up when you fix it before it becomes an issue, we're going to go well done. Now, when you do that, you take a lot of the stress and pressure out. You get rid of all that rag stuff. You make it transparent to the team what their commitments are. You have sense of what's coming up, where the pressures are going to come from. So I'm not sure if you are working in that sort of preliminating, forward-focused way towards sort of zero project defect, whether you still have all those stresses or not, because the surprises aren't there anymore. A bit boring, maybe.
Definitely.
So when I'm doing eliminating successful projects, which is my zero method, what I do is I get them to do what the why piece. Why are we doing this project? What does it look like? What success? How much money? Then I get them to sit around. And I do it on Cube, so it's in VR or super reality. So when I say a big sheet, what you have to imagine me as an avatar sticking electronic digital post-its up. Okay, I get them to then look at the whole project, everything which they think can go wrong. Then there's two other elements which are really, really quite crucial. One is the sponsors have to get into a mentorship mindset of helping the project leads look forward. Because the sponsors, sometimes they don't pay any attention. Then they come and dump on the project leader. So getting the sponsors into that mentorship mindset is really important as part of the overall process. And then using what we thought the why and the what as the metrics for success, both in the process, are we pissing people off, the soft stuff, and the hard stuff, are we delivering? Therefore, all of a sudden, the project becomes forward-focused, less stressful, probably a little less mad, and that's what I do for clients now. I tend not to be doing the more traditional look back to the rearview mirror stuff. I tend to be working more on ESP, but lots of clients are just not ready for it, you know, because you start explaining to them and they go, "Well, is it an agile methodology?" You go, "No, it's completely different." "Oh, no, I've never heard of this one." "Yes, I said it was different. I meant it's new."
When you talk about understanding the glide path, do you think there's something around how we train project managers, or do or don't train project managers? I've heard this saying, in times of crisis, people typically descend to their level of training. So you use the example of Sully. You know, he knew his glide path. He managed to land successfully on the Hudson, and he got a good kicking for it, for failing his project.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you see how we're training project managers? Is there...
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, as you know, I fly helicopters, and the rule is that a cockpit is not a good place to learn completely new lessons. Okay. And then the other one is your brain should always arrive at a place before your aircraft does. So yes, the training is quite important. I don't know. I'm not doing that much project management training and education. I do it for some of the large clients, a couple of consultants, global consultancies and stuff like that. But it tends to be when people come to ask me. So I'm not really in the main melee, because the main melee, people are still discussing scoping documents and benefits management and EQ, which I've told you I don't understand, and stuff like that. And I don't know why they're doing it, because we know how to run perfect projects. We already know that. I've published all my stuff. It's not secret. You know, they can buy my book for peanuts, I don't know, $10, and go make thousands of it. But they don't necessarily do that. They just teach the stuff we were teaching 30 years ago. I don't know why. It's a mystery. I think it's to do, when I was joking about, you know, you can either sheep dip them with something which is really basic and easy to teach, or you can grow them through education. In other words, you can train them or you can educate them. And I think the training is cheaper and just so much more attractive to the customers.
Yeah.
Awesome. I just want to rewind a little bit, Eddie, and that scenario you're playing out about, you know, everything going wrong on Zoom and aliens having conversation. I'd actually love that to happen. Maybe they could teach us project management professionals something new and different that we're missing, because they've got more than just a bird's eye view. Whether we'll be able to understand them or not, or maybe we will, because some of the
Martin will.
Martin will, definitely.
I'm pretty sure he's an alien.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm kind of with you on EQ as well. I've read a couple of books on EQ, and the only thing I really take from it is empathy. Have a bit of empathy with the people you work with. You know, not everyone, you don't always know what people are going through, and don't be so harsh on them. And I think you touched on that, Val. But I want to, you brought it up, Cube. I want to touch on that. But just before we do, because I know that's quite a big topic, I want to hear about how you came up with it and where it is today and where it's going. You also mentioned something around blowing bubbles. And in similar fashion to the caterpillar and the butterfly, I wonder how blowing bubbles relates to project management. And Martin's got a very, very puzzled look on his face. Val's smiling because otherwise he'll have a puzzled look as well. I am extremely puzzled. So those listening are going, what the hell? Blowing bubbles, Eddie?
Yeah, so blowing bubbles. So I don't know if you remember the beginning of the podcast, I talked about Ellie Goldratt, the chap with the very successful business book, and having a method which he called effect cause effect to use for analyzing factories. So what I had to do when I started to try and do this project management research really fast was it wasn't factories, because some of the things might be things like the team are unhappy. That's not like 2 units too many. It didn't fit the method. So I had started building on the method softer human elements. The method is very simple. The best way to understand it is, I'll give you 3 different quick stories. The funniest joke in the world, apparently, is the one where Sherlock Holmes and Watson go on holiday. And they're asleep in the middle of the night, and Holmes wakes Watson and goes, Watson? He says, can you see the stars? And Watson says, yeah, I can see the stars. And Holmes says, what does it tell you? So Watson says, oh, it tells me it's a lovely evening and it's going to be colder later. He said, no, nudges him again. What does it tell you? You can see the stars. And he shivers. He says, well, it tells me that God is great. He's creating this firmament. And Holmes says, no, come on, Watson, think. What does it tell you? He said, it tells me that it's going to be a lovely day tomorrow. He said, no, look, I'm the greatest detective in the world. What it tells me, the fact that I can see the stars, and he shivers, is that somebody's stolen our tent. So that is basically how you do research at about 100 times faster than Harvard or Yale or London Business School or anywhere else. The way they do research is they interview 4,000 project managers. And then they say, of our 4,000 project managers, 6 of them liked Agile, 20, and they make these bar charty things. You've seen them. Okay, so what they're doing is they're thinking that incidents, how often something happens, is actually a useful guide to activity, how you do stuff. There's no connection. It just means it's a popular thing. Or they'll do correlation. All the people who used Agile got higher project scores. It's correlation. It's not causality. You know, I've noticed how every time the bird starts singing, the daffodils open. Isn't that just magic? No, it's a correlation. The sun makes the birds come out. The sun makes the daffodils grow. Whenever you have a common cause, things always correlate. Okay. So the method I've told you with the home story is about causality. So this is your problem. Our projects are not delivering fast enough. Why? Because the project leader doesn't have an ability to make things up as they go along, be creative. That's your guess. It's not necessarily true. So then we say, well, if they don't have that ability, what other things would you expect them to see? Well, they'll always go back to the manual. When they have a problem, they'll step back to the original outcome. And then you have to ask, well, what would we never see? We never see any laughter or creativity. Do they ever laugh? No. So that way we validate that our guess is approximately correct. So we have one bubble, the one we started with. We have a new bubble. And then we build all these bubbles and they map out the whole problem. And that's what bubble diagram is. It's a way of actually being able to map out complexity really simply one step at a time.
Awesome. Awesome. And you spoke about Cube, and is this something you do in this virtual reality space? Yeah. Because I know you've mentioned it as well around design thinking, and maybe let's stop there for those that haven't heard of this phrase before. Design thinking, what is it? And then let's jump into Cube and how that all comes into space.
Yeah. So design thinking was created as a concept by the company IDEO. Now, I worked with IDEO with Tim Brown and Colin Burns and a couple of the other founders decades ago, when they started moving themselves on being a traditional design business. So like the lovely decks which you got for mixing, designers, all they used to do in the past was make things look good. And they wanted to do more than that. So I helped them reinvent themselves to be able to take the skills of reinventing things so that they were a good experience and broaden it out to solve complex problems. And that's what design thinking is about. So they came up with that word. And at the time also, I was on a board or something called the United Kingdom Design Council. So I was one of the board members. And so as we were working through our workshops on what should design do, how does it fit together, we created a PET, basically a performance enhancement tool called the Double Diamond, which was a way to think where you basically had divergent thinking to understand what the thing about, then converge on what the problem was, then you diverge, look at solutions, then you converge on. That's why it's called a double diamond. And so that idea of using design-based thinking is very popular around the world, but it's only one of the types of thinking. You can also do just straightforward invention. That's another inventive thinking, creative thinking, and so on and so forth. There's four different what we call sparks, but the most popular one people like is design thinking.
Awesome. Now, I want to jump into Cube, and I know Val is hugely excited about this as well because he loves technology, Eddie. Or maybe this is where we switch over and call you Cyber Frank.
Cyber Frank,
right?
Yeah.
Because this is huge, exciting stuff. But you were actually ahead of everyone else, I think, from what I'm seeing. You know, when, how, who, what, all the questions around Cube, virtual reality, working in this space.
Yeah. So Cube is it's not actually technology. I know it uses computers and internet, but what was the problem we had to solve? The problem we had to solve was I was trying to teach people so they would apply. And initially I used to be able to get them into a room because the courses were all localish companies or people fly in. And then over a period of about a week, or they give us 2 weeks, you could mold them, give them things to do. Like the course I ended up designing at Ashridge, we would get a charity in for 2 days and the participants would make a professional video for them. So they had to learn how to listen to people, etc. And all the things you described about when you're talking about, getting the plane not flying and stuff. So they then started becoming more global and they gave us less and less time. So the question was, how do I get them to act? I can explain the what to them, not useful. I explain the why to them, interesting but not useful. I want them to act. I want them to know how to do it and to do it. Now, it's easier to basically act your way into a new way of being than it is to think your way into a new way of acting. And it sounds a bit crazy. But as human beings, for billions of years, we didn't have speech. We didn't necessarily have logical thoughts and communication. But boy, could we take down those massive, great, what are those old elephants called? Mammoths.
Mammoths, yeah.
Yeah, we could do it. We just grunt, bang, bang, poor mammoth, done, okay? So how did we do it? Because we did it through action. So when you're teaching people, if you get them to do it, it becomes them. They become that person. So if I've got somebody to do the trust thing I was sharing with you, Martin, they learn how to do it in their situation. And before it would be during the course, and then after that they can do it. So that was one of the problems we were trying to, how do we get people to behave so that they become them? Second was they were becoming more and more dispersed and they didn't want to fly everyone around. The third problem was that it was no longer enough just to run a course and let people loose. You wanted to run a course, make it them, and then hold their hands as they grew and embed it in the organization and stop that senior person who said, we never did this in our time, I don't approve. We wanted to stop them blocking stuff. So that was the problem where Cube started. So it's not really technology, it's a problem solution. So how do you do that? Well, we know that tools are really useful. We've talked about different tools. I've explained how PETs work, for example, the performance enhancement tools, because they let people do things they otherwise couldn't do. Good, we can do tools. Other tools, people have PowerPoint and stuff. They have lots of software tools. That's not enough. We wanted them to connect with people. So we know we need a platform to share, to be able to collaborate, to look at documents and stuff like that. Platform. Teams, 365, Slack, platforms. But we thought, why don't we make the platform a room? so people can be there and talk and write and see, so that the platform mimics reality, so that we can actually be shoulder to shoulder. If you're not sure about something, you can, and if we make it persistent, in other words, after our call now, everything evaporates. But if you wanted to come back in here and say, look, I've got one more thought. Or if I wanted to come in here early and leave you a message saying, look, think about this before we start, most of these things don't have persistence. But a room, like a project room, has persistence. It lasts. So you can go there every week. It becomes part of your way of being and stuff like that. So the rooms, we call them cubicles. And so in the rooms, we have the whiteboards, the drawing boards, the videos, everything you would normally do. You chat, you have an avatar. We have these very simple avatars. And I'm going to tell you two things. The rooms are really retro. Everyone has modern, modern, wow, look, etc. And the rooms are retro because we suddenly thought to ourselves, well, look, if it looks like a room, it's useful because people know what to do. So a table is somewhere you sit. But it's a bit like saying you're in a spacecraft with zero gravity and you're designing the spacecraft room. How would you do it? You wouldn't sort of put everything on the floor because there's no floor. Are you with me? So people always expect to see, it must be modern with shiny windows. And no, it's not real. That's irrelevant. So we sort of use it as a, are you ready for us test? Anyone who says, well, I'm not sure if these tables look modern enough, we go, you're looking at the wrong thing. So we do one of two things. We either say no, smile at them, or we charge them much more money. Never reward bad behavior. If they're going to be stuck in the mud and not thinking clearly, you should never give them cheap prices. So that's one. And then the avatars are the other thing which people see visually. And they're these funny square boxy things. And the first thing people say is, why don't they look like me? When I go on my computer games on Verbella, they let me make my own avatar. Do you guys have any idea why we don't use human-shaped avatars? Give me some ideas.
Waste of time, distractions.
No, worse than that, introverts hate making avatars of themselves. But they don't want to be there in the first place. Now you're making them make an avatar of themselves. Distraction, yes. What else? Give me some more.
Misrepresentation. Generally, when people personify themselves online, they always make themselves slender, stronger, bigger.
You got it. So think about the psychology of this. I'm slightly overweight, okay? And you say, make your avatar, and I make a nice slim avatar, okay? I know you're thinking, no, Eddie, you're a fat bastard. I know you're thinking that. So all the time I'm in this cubicle, I'm not comfortable. Or I make it fat, and then everyone's going, he's as fat as himself. So human-shaped avatars look like a great thing. They're wonderful for gaming, but for a real work environment, they're really, really bad. And if the avatar looks like your geography teacher you hated, you hate them on instinct, and then you bring in all your biases. Are they tall? Are they short? Are they male? Are they female? Are they good looking? Are they ugly? So all the bad stuff, which we do in real life, we just transport it all. And that's a bit nuts, isn't it? So we have these very simple avatars. Your webcam can show in your head. We tend not to put them on. And we discovered something which is even more important. When you're working together, you don't look at the people, you look at the work. So I love it's just nonsense.
Yeah, no, I love how you've just stripped it back and said, let's remove all of the noise and what really matters. And this is where we're gonna get full value on placing focus on the right things.
Correct. Exactly.
And I love that single vision, that focus on getting it right up front and the simplicity. But like I said, I know I know Val loves this space. So jump in, Cyber Frank.
So you've got the tools, which are the pets. So every single thing you do, there are pets and tools. Then you've got the space. Then you got on top of that the culture. Culture is really important. That's the transformation. So imagine we're in a meeting together. We're coming, hi, how's your weekend? Hi, and then we all sit around the table, and then we start chatting. Maybe we have an agenda, maybe we don't. Then after about an hour, we leave. That's how we used to do it before the lockdown stuff. With lockdown, we come on Skype. Hi, how are you doing? Hi. We talk to each other. Bye, and then we disappear. And people do this for 8 hours a day. Why? Because they did it in the past that way. Come on, in a fast-changing, complex world, we've got to deliver projects, got to engage people. No, when they arrive, you build the agenda of what you're going to do together. We know that people don't come to project meetings prepared. So we say, okay, we've got an hour. What's your biggest hope? What are we going to cover, Dale? What's your biggest fear, Val? Let's all write them up. And we write down our hopes and our fears. And then whoever's coordinating it takes the bunch of fears first. Why first? Why don't we do the hopes first?
Set a compelling vision, I guess.
Yes, because the compelling vision will come from the hopes. But all the time people think something bad is going to happen, they're not listening. They're doing their WhatsApp. So you say, so you take the fears and you go, let's kill all the fears. Okay, so you go together and go, right, I think it's going to be boring. What can we do to make it less boring? We'll stop every 5 minutes for tea, etc. You remove all the fears. Okay, are you all with me? Great. So they've all the fears have gone. At the end of the fears, we'll do something else, which is part of cube culture. We do something called spin casting. Whoever's coordinating say, right, okay, those are the fears. We dealt with all of them. Dale, are you happy? Yes. Martin, are you happy? Yes. Val, are you happy? Yes. Eddie, are you happy? Yes. You go through everyone, brings in the introverts, gives everyone a chance to talk, stops the extroverts just boring everyone. You got it? It's changing. This is the butterfly. So what have we done? We've brought people in. We've created the agenda live with them. We've de-risked it live with them. We've spun cast to make sure everyone's got a chance and a voice. This is not a normal meeting. So the top pyramid of Cube is the bit which is almost impossible, which is the transformational culture. Then underpinning that is the spaces, and then underpinning that are all the tools. And so by getting them to behave differently, remember the problem we started with, next time when they're face-to-face with a senior sponsor, they'll say to the senior sponsor, well, you've seen projects like this before. Do you have any particular hopes or fears? Because they can do it because they've done it. You with me? And so that's the way Cube works. Sorry, Val, it's not technologically technical, but it isn't half effective. It's bloody effective.
No, I love the fact. I mean, I'm actually an avid student myself. I'm studying kind of data science and business psychology at the same time because I think they're one and the same. And I find it really interesting on the fact that, if you observe big companies, what they're doing, they are pivoting to VR. They are pivoting to what they call the metaverse. And for those that don't know what's happening, check it out. It's a very interesting space, and it reminds me of Second Life a little bit when you talk about it. Remember when Second Life came out? It was like this thing. It was probably too ahead of its time when it was rolled out. Timing's important when you roll things like that out. Yeah,
timing's important and purpose. I think the metaverse stuff is going to be very exciting, but I suspect it's just going to be another fat caterpillar.
It could be. And is this the one here? I'll just bring this up on the screen for those that are watching YouTube.
Cube. Yeah, this is Cube. So, if you'd asked me, I could have taken you into a cubicle.
Next time we'll get you on for a Cube special. How's that?
No, I'm just saying. So this is Cube. I mean, we run open events, and that's what this inspiration thing is. So you see the simple avatars there, and everyone's talking, everyone's walking. The sound is three-dimensional. So when somebody speaks, you know who's speaking because you can literally turn your head, turn to face them. So little things like that are very important. In gaming engines, that's not always the case because it's not important in the gaming engine necessarily. And then there are other things like the importance of having this is a mixed group. So NHS, Sony, GAO, and so on. So it's a mixed group, having the affiliation because people want to know, where the person's coming from more than they want to see the person. So there are little things like that. But the metaverse stuff, I'm following very closely, obviously. But at the same time, I think they're starting from the technology end.
That's right.
I saw Facebook's workrooms, which is just technically amazing. But they do things like the avatars are human. And when they talk, their mouths move. So that is seriously cool. But think about it. The reason people want to be physically together in a room is so I can look into your eyes. It's not because I want to look into your avatar's dead eyes.
Exactly. So I think that it reminds me of my daughter plays Roblox. The game Roblox, and that's a very similar. Yeah, it doesn't have that. It's not looking to recreate the person essentially. No, but it's giving the ability to. Oh wow,
that's
is that it
office.
There?
This is my office.
No way.
So this is just meetings I've been having. I've been on holiday, but you see, when I click on here, you can see who wrote it. Ian Clarkson from a company called QA. We've got this sticky note from his hopes and fears. We talked about hopes and fears. Look, there's some client opportunities, blah blah blah, etc. And of course, it's a whiteboard, but whiteboards are not real. So therefore, it can have multiple different tabs, okay? And so on and so forth. And of course, I've got a coffee machine because you've got to have your coffee.
Nice.
And I located it. It looks over London.
Yeah, perfect. Cheap rent.
I got like a beautiful desk with a couple of massive.
I love the floor too. It's actually really nice.
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's a minimum you need to get stuff done. This is a display, so I don't know if I've got any videos on here. No videos. I could get you one or something like that. I've got a slideshow. Was that slideshow? Let's see, the slideshow, etc. So this is a screen. You can put your PowerPoint. Oh, this is the history of Cube. There you go. I don't know where this came from. So this is me talking about 93, talking about my original research when I finished my first set of New World books, including All Change in there. And then this is trying to think about what does it mean and so on. So yeah, slideshow. We're watching a slideshow in a screen on a Zoom call. Cool.
Incredible. No, I'm keen. And how do people get, just before I pass off to Martin, how do people get involved in this? Is there a way and a process?
Sure. We run open sessions, inspiration on Cube sessions. So that page you showed with cube.cc/inspiration. You can just book yourself on, come in, meet other people. We usually have a topic. We do a round table, a bit of fun, lasts about an hour and a half or something like that. But every client gets a campus, which has offices. So I'm here, conference rooms, outdoor cafes, especially with lockdown, Val. You could be in the cafe, got blue skies. You can meet people, chat to them.
I love it. Thank you.
And then there's like a sort of a bar. So I'm not in a very public place, but you'd have all your colleagues down here and they're 2 clicks away. And so if you want to go to them, you can go to them, or if you wanted to go somewhere else, you could just go somewhere else. So the whole, I worked out once, if this was real estate, as in real estate, I would be just about as rich as Jeff Bezos.
Well, you laugh about that kind of thing, Eddie, but I don't think it's far away from selling virtual space. I think that's a thing. And I certainly think I see Facebook trying to monetize this in a way, like selling adverts and posters. And
you can't sell the virtual space. We've watched something like 14 companies come and try and do that. Because what happens is people just bring, it's not transformational. They just bring their current lazy caterpillar and plonk it
to the virtual.
In the virtual. So this is what we call a quick meet. So this is where you'd meet someone and say, hey, let's solve a problem. So introductions, what do we want to do? We want to create a brief. Remember I was telling about pets? This one, purpose, principles, people. This one we'd say, okay, what do you think the purpose is? Let's write. And you always write in sequence, it's a culture. So you say, the purpose is to do X, Y, Z. They say something completely different. Then you can have a discussion. And together you very quickly come to a conclusion because you're not face-to-face adversarial, you're side-to-side, staring at the work. Or maybe you say, hey guys, we need to de-risk this thing. We're really worried about it. Let's preliminate some of the issues. So you come here. This is what I call surviving the aliens. Do you know my alien story?
No.
No. Okay. The best thing you need to understand about risk is it's really easy to manage if you watch the science fiction film, because all science fiction films are exactly the same and involve aliens. What's the job of an alien?
Attack
kill humans.
Travel to Earth, eat all the humans. You, in other words, okay? So alien spaceship has crash landed. What do you not do? You do not run towards it because you know it's dangerous, okay? But they always do in the films. If you hadn't told me, I'd have gone. When you arrive at the space station, it's always the spacecraft's always the same. You go in, it's small on the outside. Inside, it's huge. Aliens, no manners, never come and greet you. So you wander around, go, hello, where are you, aliens? Suddenly you come face to face with an alien with teeth and things like that, dripping poisonous, acidy things. Now, what you should do is kill it. That's what they should do in the films. They never do. They call their friends, say, there's an alien, it's really, and they get cut off. Why? Because they've been eaten. Okay? So the friends arrive, catch the alien, take it back to the laboratory for study and lock it in the kitchen. They limit it. But of course, the alien's very docile because it's digesting the food. Then it wakes up, nobody's keeping an eye on it, escapes, hides in the ducts, comes out, eats everyone, and finally you have to blow it up, which is what's known as Plan B, okay? So that is risk pre-elimination in just under a minute.
Wow.
Amazing.
So we go, right, what are we trying to do? The objective is we're trying to build something truly amazing, okay? I don't know whether you guys are recording this. The guys on the podcast have no idea what we're doing. So we go, okay, what's your point of view? What's your biggest fear? My biggest fear is that we won't be able to do it. What's our stakeholder, the sponsor? Sponsor's scared we'll spend too much money, okay? Great. Is there anything we can do to fix your fear now? We can just do X, Y, Z. Are you with me? So very quickly, together, solved problems, issues, risks, gone. And that's it, really.
Awesome. I love it, Cyber Frank.
I figure out to stop sharing my screen.
So good.
I don't know how to stop sharing my screen. How do I do it? Is that, oh gosh, it just made it even smaller. How do you do it? I don't know. Can one of you, Martin, can you stop it?
There we go. There we go. We're back. So, Cyber Frank or Professor Eddie, it's amazing because I think you have just increased our viewers on YouTube by tenfold. Because no, to be honest, I think even your explanation in audio form, the listeners will get, but if they want the visual, obviously go directly to YouTube. Yeah. But I was just thinking maybe the next podcast we have with you, because I'd love to do a follow-up. There's so much we could talk to you. We could do it in Cube.
Projects, we did it just once. We don't do that.
That'd be amazing.
Let's do a podcast in Cube. That would be pretty cool.
Great idea.
Just stream out of it.
Yeah, let's see if we can do that. But I wanted to say as well that you spoke about fog a lot, and this podcast is a lot like fog because Val and myself and Martin, we still don't know what the hell we're doing, but what we do know is a lot of listeners and people out there are gaining a lot from it. So it's huge thanks to guests like yourself for sharing that. But before we sort of go, we do have a feature as well, because I know it is late for you as well. And we thank you for being up this late to accommodate our Melbourne friend in lockdown there. But we do have a feature, which is a bit of fun at the end. I mean, the whole episode has been tremendous fun. You bring so much energy to everything you do, but the feature is a little bit of additional fun. For this, we'll hand over to Mr. Martin Curriston.
Yeah, thanks. As Dale said, it's a guest feature called Defend the Indefensible. So it's where we invite our guests to defend a ridiculous statement for 30 seconds. It's inspired by some of the ridiculous things we've all heard over our careers. I'm sure you've heard many, many, many ridiculous things over the course of yours. So if you're willing,
no, why not?
Let's give it a go.
What happens if we discover that my defense actually changes your mind? That could be dangerous.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Okay, let's go. Let's go.
So, Eddie, your statement to defend. Why do we need to look forward? The past is the best measure of the future. Discuss.
You want me to defend that we should look to the past or we should look to the future? Which one?
Defend the past. Look to the past. Okay. As it's the best measure.
Well, it's obvious we should look to the past because for a start, we don't know what the future is. So we would just be wasting our time by looking to the future. Whereas the past is documented. We have data. We can prove it. So why would you look to the future? And everyone knows history repeats itself. So what would be possibly new, which we couldn't learn by studying ancient texts and what the Egyptians did to get the angles right on the pyramids? That's how we should drive projects. We should do it just like the Egyptians did, and everything would run perfectly. Admittedly, a vast volume of expendable local labor is required. Apart from that, it's a brilliant idea always to look backwards.
Brilliant. There's the outro for the show right there.
Yeah, there you go.
Thanks a lot. I could feel the pain seeping through that expression there. Brilliant. Thanks a lot. Just before you go, we've got time for one more feature. It's called Fiverr. 5 quick-fire questions all about yourself. So if you're willing,
sure, go for it.
Let's give it a go. Okay. Question 1. Would you rather spend your day with people or technology?
I'm supposed to quick fire. So I'll spend it with people if I'm teaching, but I'll spend it with technology if I'm not. Because I'm an introvert.
Interesting.
I don't want to spending time with people unless I have, unless I have a role, something to contribute.
Fair. What's more important, time, cost, or quality?
Time.
Interesting. Number 3, what book would you recommend to our subscribers?
all of my books, I've got 10 of them. All change perfect projects, putting strategy to work, making the thing happen. Who Killed the Spark? I've got to just go and buy them all and read them all. News for the New World, read them all, and then you'll know everything.
What will be
I'm not supposed to recommend my own. Oh, other books.
God.
I'll tell you what. The book which everyone should read is The Master and His Emissary. You all need to read that because it helps us understand why the world is struggling so much.
Sorry, what was that called?
The Master and His Emissary. It's Ian Gilchrist. I know
you're writing it down.
I know you will read it.
Brilliant, thanks a lot. Number 4.
It's dense.
Number 4, what will be your new work routine? Office, home, or hybrid?
I travel by Cube. I've been traveling by Cube for 10 years. I travel everywhere by Cube. It's irrelevant because it's multimodal. You can be in a cafe shop, you can be at home, you can be walking your dog. If you're on Cube, we're all together. Level playing field. So I've been doing that for 10 years. So
brilliant.
Awesome.
Well, that was a 4th option. Last one. What was your biggest mistake on a project?
Biggest or most expensive?
Either.
Oh, gee, I've made so many mistakes. I mean, when I was at Shell with the project, I screwed up one of the stakeholders who I wasn't involving that much, and he'd been running the project before me. I didn't know, so he came in and sabotaged the whole physical project at night, and then I had to rebuild. So I mean, that was pretty serious because he was about like 6 layers more senior than me. Yeah, so I've done that. Gee, I've done so many. It's too embarrassing if I list all of them. Tons. Teaching courses which I designed. And then when I ran the pilot, I discovered that I hadn't designed them properly. And I've done them all. I've done everything. Name it.
Wow. Eddie,
Brilliant.
It's been an absolute blast, an absolute pleasure. As I said, I love your energy. I love your bright shirts as well. Do you have like a full wardrobe of various bright shirts?
A whole sort of rainbow, except I don't really do blue that much. So
right.
It's sort of, yeah. So
but it's amazing. I love them all. And, we'd love to have you back. As we said, there's so much I think you can impart to the project community. And thank you for spending your time with us today. But before we let you go, any final thoughts you want to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the final thought I have is very simple. It honestly is possible to deliver perfect projects. It's using the skills for delivering very good traditional projects, those 5 things I talked about. It's changing the processes around it towards glide paths and mentoring and future focus rather than rear view mirror. And it's recognizing when you have to go through the fog to transform and having the courage to do that. Why is this important? Because we know things like we're destroying our habitat faster than we can because we waste so much of everything we do. We take out more out of the soil than we need, and we put it back in, or we put it into fish in terms of plastic, wherever it is. Projects tend to fail, so the effort and cost of money for that goes to money heaven, which means somebody's working harder, driving a car or a lorry for a longer distance. So the world will change as we get projects better, but also we are the ones who change the world. The politicians, they don't do it. They pass their laws to keep you in your room, but the person who made you stay in your room is the project leader who went and ran that tracing thing which tells whether Val's left his room. The politicians can't do it. We do it. So as project leaders, we need to have a sense of amazing foresight and ethics, and we need to be able to deliver much better. And right now we have rogue project leaders who lead projects which make the world worse, make people more miserable, destroy the habitats for us and all the other animals, and so on. And so that would be my final message. Let's take the responsibility as project leaders to work on things which add to the human sum and save the planet at the same time.
Wow. I feel like we need a mic drop sound effect just in there, but hugely inspirational. Thank you. Val, any final thoughts from you?
I can't go after that. Jeez. Eddie, it's been fantastic to have you with such high energy. It would be great to work on a project with someone like you. And understandably, that's what it's about. It's about having fun on the job. And I love the bit around responsible project management. I think that's very important. We've had a few guests on about that. And it's the first time I've heard about money heaven. So you'll have to explain that next time you're back on the show. But thank you so much for your time. It's been a blast.
Fine, well, thanks. Thank you.
It has indeed, and we got to give a special shout out to Jonathan Norman for making this happen. Thanks, Jono. It's been awesome to have Eddie, and we will have him and you back at some stage in the future. But folks, that is all the time we have on this episode. Remember to hit subscribe before you go, and once again, a massive thank you. I know I can't talk; it's a bit late. A massive thank you to Professor, Dr. Captain Eddie Obeng, and thank you all for listening. Till next time, we say stay safe, be disruptive, and have fun doing it. From me, Val, and Martin, it's bye for now.